Okay, so if you've been using LaTeX for a while, you probably know there's a program called Xfig, which exports your diagram separate from its labels so that the labels will appear as LaTeX in your LaTeX file. And I'm going to show you how to do that with a new program called Inkscape. I have a little minimal LaTeX document here with support for a fancy font to show you why this might be useful, and this is going to help me include the file that I'm going to export from Inkscape. I have a very simple directory. All I have is my Inkscape drawing, and this is the text file I just showed you. So we're going to keep the drawing really simple. Just going to make a little circle here, and I'm going to put a little label beside it. There's a nice little thing. There are lots of features to know about Inkscape. I don't want to show them to you now because I want to keep this video quick. We'll save a copy here under File, and I'm going to save this as an EPS file. This is system dependent, but you might have good luck using a PDF export, but EPS on my system is more reliable. So I'll press save, and I want to make sure that this option is selected and that the export area is the drawing and not the page, just the drawing. Okay, so I'll press alright, I'll press OK. That is. Now my directory looks like this. I've got these two extra files. This file is just LaTeX. And so essentially, by the way, you need to have the color package to use this. But essentially, it just puts into the drawing this word right here, hello, that I wrote as a label. And for some reason it insists on an EPS file. You can actually delete the extension, and then when you decide to, for example, change all of your diagrams to PDFs, then this thing won't complain. And the other thing to notice in this file is there are some instructions at the top, especially how to scale this image. We're going to use this in our text file. So I've used that here, and the command text width, and then I've just used input because this isn't a graphics file, it's a text file. Input, and I've included the extension. So I'm just going to use a command. In case you're wondering, this is a custom command, which is basically just LaTeX MK with the PDF option. Okay, and I'm going to show you why this doesn't work yet, actually. And I'm going to show you how to correct this problem. So obviously, this label right here is not where I wanted it to be. I wanted the label to be to the right of the circle. Okay, and what happens is that the EPS export thinks that the bounding box is the bounding box of the non-text elements. That's this guy, and then the EPS underscore tech thinks that the bounding box is all of the elements. It goes around all of the elements, including the text. So one way to remedy that is to include a white box. Now, obviously, I could remove the outline of this box, but I won't because I just want to remind you that it's there. And sometimes you'll have a bunch of LaTeX in here. For example, you might have the word tiny. And that makes the label look long in the diagram, but it won't appear all that long on the actual output. And I'm going to show you how to deal with that too. So we're going to export that the same as before. Those options will be saved in Inkscape, so you can generally just press return twice, and that's a nice way to do that. And oops, I just have to, oh shoot. There we go. Great. So that kind of worked. The problem is that I have all this space, and as far as I know, I can't just estimate the size of the hello, which is going to be small because I'm actually scaling the image to be quite large, but I'm not scaling the font. So that's going to be quite small. Yeah, let's turn snapping off. So if I were to estimate that, save a copy, EPS, return. So what happened there was that even though my white box, the bounding box here includes the size of the actual hello. If the hello were to appear here, it would be inside the bounding box. It makes a difference. The fact that this is larger than that makes a difference to the geometry to the way this thing calculates it. Personally, I would call this a bug, not a feature. So there's one more thing we can do to deal with that, and that is that we could just make that really small. Okay. Obviously, this is not the most convenient way to deal with that. Another way to do it is to just make that quite small as well. Okay. But here's the surefire way to make sure this is narrow enough. I just have to remember that it's there. So now if I save a copy, same options as before, it works properly. So where exactly does it put the hello? Well, it puts the hello right at this little square. Whenever I have a text box and I write some stuff, there's a little square in the bottom left. So that little square is going to be the place where the beginning of the label goes. Okay, so that's how to use that. And we'll just do one more test here. We're going to make this quite small. Just to show that the font doesn't scale, only the image scales when you do this. And of course, you can see we have our fancy font there. If I remove that that command, I'll get my regular font, the default LaTeX font back. So that's a crash course on how to use that feature. And as I said a few moments ago, this box here doesn't actually have to have that dashed line around it. It can have no stroke paint, as long as the fill is actually white and not just clear. So if I were to move this to the top, it would cover everything. I'll move it back down. We save a copy, same options as before. Okay, and you can see that relative to the circle, the hello always starts in the same spot. So I'll give you a brief tour of how I'm using this for an actual manuscript, for example. So I've made a few things like this with Inkscape. I think I did both my master's and PhD theses, and all of my figures for basically everything have been in Inkscape, except for once when my PhD advisor forced me to try Xfig. This whole thing that you see here is one diagram in the paper, and I have it in this series of sublayers where my text is in a layer, my nodes are in a layer, my paths are in a layer, these things are in another layer, etc. And this is one case in a theorem. So when this is visible, I use that same exporting technique that I showed you a moment ago, and it will export this as a figure for the paper. And of course, I've got my white background here. I actually don't seem to need it just because all of my text is within the bounding box anyway, but I usually use that as a safety precaution now. Here's another diagram for the paper. So that one's up here now, lemma related to theorem 7 of a different paper, and so on and so forth. So what I do with Inkscape is I actually use one Inkscape document as the source file for all of my all of my different figures for the paper, which is a convenient way to work. And thank you very much for watching.